Welcome to Mash the Gas Podcast. Mash the Gas Podcast. Your weekly breakdown of every NASCAR Cup Series race. Here are your hosts, Kevin Batstone and Jeff Davis.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of Mash the Gas Podcast. I'm Jeff Davis. Joining me shortly is Mr. Kevin Batstone, here to cover the Bass Pro Shops night race at Bristol, baby. And I know what the answer is going to be, Kevin, but who mashed the gas this week?
Well, we're going to have to give a couple Mash the Gas awards here. All of them, of course, going to Hendrick Motorsports. First of all, Kyle Larson in that 5-car just completely dominated this race. 462 laps led, Jeff. I mean, lights out fast. Nobody could get around him. Just unbelievable performance by the 5.
Absolutely. I mean, it was the most ever by a Hendrick Motorsports driver, and actually only second to the great Cale Yarborough, who holds the record for most laps led at 496. So, yeah, it amazes me what Kyle Larson can do when he really puts his mind to it, because we know the last 2 weeks weren't the greatest for him. So, yeah, he came out and he mashed the gas.
Yeah, that's a crazy stat to throw out there. I mean, you got to think at this stage of NASCAR Cup racing, we don't have a lot of tracks that we race more than 400 laps at. So, to have an opportunity to lead 462, it's going to have to be at a Bristol or a Martinsville situation. So to go back to 1977, since this has been done, is just purely incredible. And then, comparing it to some of Hendrick's greats, Jeff Gordon did it with 431 led twice. He did it once back in 2005, and then back also in the 90s. Martinsville is where Gordon used to dominate. So to lead that many laps, especially in this day and age with stage racing and all the other variables, just goes to show you that these guys are not messing around. They immediately catapulted to what I think, Jeff, lock him into Phoenix, favorite to win it all. Kyle Larson, I think, has to be the favorite.
I'd agree with you, Kevin. I think he is the favorite as far as what I've been looking at. It's just amazing to see him get his 5th win this year. I mean, that's phenomenal. It's he's just got incredible stats. His 28th career win, his 2nd win actually at Bristol. Really cool statistics to see. And like you said, it catapulted him to the very top in first place as far as the playoff standings go, Kevin.
Well, he's got to feel pretty good, right? Carrying all this momentum into Kansas, where, oh, by the way, he won this race back in the spring. Sure, it was by 0.001 thousandths of a second, but it was still a victory for Larson. So, he feels good going into Kansas. But how about Hendrick Motorsports just as a whole team right now? I mean, we take a look at who moved on to the round of 12. All of Hendrick Motorsports, all of Penske still alive. And then obviously a handful of Joe Gibbs Toyotas. We did lose Martin Truex Jr., which, what a tough deal there. I think everybody and their brother was rooting for the 19 car to move on, which was really going to take a win. And he was running pretty good there, Jeff. I don't know if he had a car to beat the 5, but, he's certainly going to be shooting himself for that pit road speeding penalty. Put him in the back, could never recover.
A very unfortunate situation for Martin Truex Jr. I mean, I just hated it. As soon as he got that speeding penalty, man, I was just kind of bummed out for him. Obviously, Ty Gibbs, he got a speeding penalty as well. Those two did not advance. So, like you said, we've got all 4 Hendrick Motorsports in the playoffs, all 3 of Penske Motorsports in the playoffs, and then, a couple here and there from other teams. But, Hendrick Motorsports just dominated this entire race. I mean, they, between Kyle Larson and Alex Bowman, who Bowman led 34 laps, there were only 4 laps led other than those 2 drivers. Tyler Reddick, he had 3 laps led, and Bubba Wallace had 1, under cautions and whatnot. So just a phenomenal day for Hendrick Motorsports in general.
Yeah, great weekend. Those guys showed up with a lot of speed. We saw how well they all qualified, of course, 1, 2, 3, and then Chase Elliott, of course, rounding out all of them in the top 10 to start this race. And how about old Chase bringing this thing home P2? I mean, another good finish. We talk about Chase being one of the best average finishing on the year and, putting himself in a position here. He runs like that for the next 3 races. He might just find his way into the round of 8. We talk about the importance of consistency and getting good finishes. He's won at Kansas before. He can certainly do it again. But I think Chase is sitting in a pretty good position, Jeff.
He's doing a damn good job. And this is the time of year. If you're going to get hot, you need to get hot right now during the playoffs, especially when you're in them. So, he's 6 points in the positive, which is, it's good. But if he runs like he did his last couple races, then, he's going to move on to the next round. So it just depends on if the number 9 car can keep that up, Kevin.
It all starts this weekend. I think a lot of these drivers have Kansas circled for an opportunity to go win, an opportunity to get some stage wins. it's a good racetrack to kick off the round of 12. And I know Joey Logano's got to be chomping at the bit, right? He found his way into the round of 12 early with that win, and now he sits only 4 points to the good. So the 22 is going to be coming out of the gate hungry. All of these guys. I mean, look, we got Kansas, we got Talladega, and the Roval. This is going to be another pretty tough stage, Jeff. I mean, we got your cookie cutter mile and a half. That's why it's circled onto a wild card, arguably 2 wild cards if you throw the Roval in there, where old Shane Van Gisbergen or an AJ Allmendinger could upset everyone.
Absolutely true. And speaking of Joey Logano, I think even number years are his lucky number, because he had the championship in 2018 and then again in 2022. Obviously, he's made the championship 4 in 2014, 2016, and additionally 2020 on top of those 2 victories, bringing that cup home to old Penske Motorsports. But I was like, hey, maybe this is his year again. Every other year he's winning, it seems like, Kevin.
It's a good possibility. And Joey's really good in these situations. He doesn't really let the pressure get to him, kind of ignores the noise, goes out and drives. Didn't have a great race in Bristol, didn't need to have a great race. That's the thing. He earned the right to, just kind of ride around and do what he needed to do because he was locked in. So now it's time to get back to work and go try and win this race this Sunday in Kansas, because, look, like we talked about in the first round, you have a bad situation in Kansas and now you got to go back to back, wild card races, so to speak. Not good situation to be trying to dig out into the round of 8.
Absolutely not. And stage points are crucial this time of year. And, Kyle Larson being able to win stage 1 and stage 2 this last weekend really helped him out, obviously, in the points. But something I kind of wanted to talk to you about a little bit, Kevin. Denny Hamlin, he entered 6 underneath the cutoff line. And after Bristol, he came out 15 above the cutoff line. And I'm hearing some chatter about old Tyler Reddick on the radio was saying to his crew chief, Billy Scott, to make sure that the number 11 knows what I did for him. So I thought that was a pretty interesting statement to be caught on air, because as we know, in stage 1, Denny Hamlin finished in P6, earning 5 valuable stage points. 19th place is where Reddick was struggling at in stage 1. In stage 2, Hamlin climbed up to 3rd place and grabbed 8 points, and Reddick was right behind him, getting 7 points. So I think he gave the old boss man a couple extra points, which, as we know, is not competitive as far as the rules go in NASCAR. And I don't know if that's going to get looked at or not, Kevin.
Well, I think SMT and a lot of other things will factor into, determining if or if not he was running at 100%. I mean, anybody can go out and say anything. He probably did. He probably looked at it like he lifted. We saw how difficult it was to pass at Bristol, which we'll get into here in a second. But the 45 really was not a top 10 car, and it showed because he finished P20. So, he did find some track position there early. I did hear those comments be made, and Billy Scott basically said, you got to go run your own race. Don't worry about the boss man. Be interesting to see how that gets, played out, whether he gave him the spot or not. I don't think that changes the outcome for the 11. The 11 was consistent enough, gain enough points and moved on, that I don't think what the 45 did made or break his current outcome.
No, it did not. It didn't make or break it for sure, but every point obviously helps. So, hey, if you gave the boss man a little bit of love there, hey, so be it if it's only for a point. Obviously, like I said, it didn't affect anyone as far as the cutoff lines or anything like that. So we'll just have to see what happens. Like I said, we'll see what goes on with the SMT data and NASCAR reviewing that. But overall, man, it was just an interesting race. I mean, I know a lot of people, if you were not a Hendrick Motorsports or a Larson fan, got pretty bored. And I've already seen a lot of, scuttlebutt on the old social media about, that was a boring race, blah, blah, blah. It reminded me of the All-Star race a while back when Larson, basically just dominated and led all the laps almost. But it was still a decent race, in my opinion, Kevin.
Well, Bristol is a great racetrack. It's unique. It's the world's last great Coliseum. We don't really race on tracks anything similar to it. Martinsville is its own beast. Bristol is its own thing. Now, what I'm trying to understand is Goodyear's tire situation, Jeff, because when we go back to the spring race, we have a completely different race. These guys, the tire fall off was so extreme that we had guys at lap 250 going, we don't even have enough sets left. That was not the case this weekend. We barely saw a tire fall off. Now, the difference was we had a triple header. So we had ARCA on the track. We had Xfinity on the track. We had a lot of rubber on the track. So there was a lot of grip out there, and they put down a little bit of track bite down on the inside groove. But Goodyear decided to bring the tire that they ran last fall. So I'm not sure if it's a Goodyear problem or if we're continuing to have a next gen short track car problem, because the racing itself, the reason I think people are saying it wasn't good is because of how hard it was to pass. And like we've talked about all year long, this is a horsepower deal. If you guys, could get these cars back up to 750, 850, we would be able to see a lot more passing at short track racing, Jeff. That's what I think it is. I don't necessarily think it's a Goodyear problem. I think we're just seeing the next gen car, create racing like this, which doesn't take anything away from Kyle Larson, because those guys have found a way to take this next gen car, take the rules package and work it to their advantage. But I think that's the conversation that NASCAR needs to be having. It's not a Goodyear tire problem. It's a short track problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been seeing a lot of shit talking about Goodyear right now as well. And I don't think it's a tire problem. I think they've done a good job. Like you mentioned, there was a lot of rubber laid down on the track between the series. I remember even during, practice and when during practice on the race, I think it was Penske, none of them got on track for about 5 to 10 minutes because they wanted to see even more rubber laid down so they could get a little more grip. I definitely think it's a horsepower issue. I think we need to put more horsepower in these cars so that we can actually see more passing. Because, as we know, these new composite bodies that are all, fiberglass, they're built like a tank, Kevin. I mean, you're seeing drivers get more disrespectful, I think, this year towards their competitors, because they know that they can, pretty much plow through, and it's not going to affect the car much for the person they're kind of getting into or themselves. But we're still not seeing that on the short tracks as far as passing. So I do think it's a horsepower issue, Kevin.
Yeah, I think it is. And that's really, we're not going to have this discussion about Kansas, right? The 1.5 package is good. The 2 mile package, the super speedway, everything there seems to be good. The intermediates, I would say, even, some say the Phoenix package isn't there yet. We'll kind of see after November what that looks like, but there's no question, we saw it with Richmond. We saw it with North Wilkesboro. We saw it with the exception of this Bristol spring race. We've seen it on every short track that drivers are complaining they can't pass. You can get up next to a guy, you can run them 20, 30, 40 laps. There's just the fall off isn't there. And you need almost 2 to 3 tenths a lap quicker to make passes at a track like Bristol. We even saw it in the Xfinity race a little bit. A lot of cars just kind of stalled out. You didn't have a lot of guys charging. Now, I will say the 23 of Bubba Wallace ran a fantastic race. He's really one of the few competitors that continued to gain and continued to find speed as the race went on, and was able to make passes late in the race. Jeff finished 10th stage 1, 6th stage 2, and then finished 3rd on the race. So those guys found a little bit of something on this short track. I think could it be a situation where we have 2 separate horsepower packages like we did 10 years ago, where we have, let's say, an 850 and a 550, and we run the 850 on the short tracks? I don't see why that can't be an option.
Yeah, I don't either. It's really something NASCAR needs to look into it. I know, a lot of drivers have really voiced their opinions on the short track packages, especially Denny Hamlin. He likes to get in the mix, throw his opinion out there more than anybody else these days. That's why it's kind of taken over the villain, which, by the way, did you see how many people actually cheered Kyle Busch for the first time, I think, in ages during this race, Kevin?
It was pretty wild. At a race that traditionally booed the hell out of Kyle Busch, they cheered him, and they're booing my man, Denny. Denny's my man.
They are, man. I think we're going to actually have to add another segment to our podcast here about the lead Diffie quotes of the race, because when he was talking about the old Toyotas coming in 3rd, 4th, and 5th, I was like, okay, you go Toyota racing, But anyways, yeah, we had Hendrick Motorsports and the Chevys finishing in P1 and 2. And then obviously Bubba Wallace, and then Denny Hamlin and Christopher Bell. But I thought it was a decent race. Definitely think there could have been improvements. Again, I think it's due to the horsepower, but that doesn't take anything away from the domination that Kyle Larson had. And I absolutely loved it when he grabbed his son Owen after the race and put him in the car and, drove him around track. And I think they even signed the lens of the camera. It was pretty cute out there, man. And someone on Twitter, I actually saw a post when Kyle Larson's son was hanging out the window with his fist up there in the air.
Like Ty Gibbs.
Yeah, it said Ty Gibbs was in Kyle Larson's car the whole time. And he's about the same size as Kyle Larson. They've got it, or not Kyle Larson, Owen Larson is about the same size and look as Ty Gibbs, because I was laughing my ass off when I saw Ty Gibbs sitting there standing next to old Michael Jordan. I'm sorry, standing next to Michael Jordan. They were just sitting there kind of chatting, and it was interesting to see the height difference between him. And then same thing with Tyler Reddick standing next to Michael Jordan. He's on the team obviously, but just seeing the size difference between those two, not even coming up to the shoulder length of old Michael Jordan.
He's definitely a tall one for sure. It's funny to see those guys, stand next to one another. I'm only at 6'1", and I get around the drivers and they're significantly shorter. So you put someone like Jordan there, he'll make anybody look small. But it's good to see Jordan at the track. He comes out here and there. Rick Hendrick, that was fantastic that Rick was there. He doesn't always get to celebrate with his drivers. He's not always at the track. So it's good to have Rick and Linda out there as well.
I love seeing Linda at the tracks, especially, man. It's really cool. So for them to be out there and the accomplishments that were, taken this weekend between Hendrick Motorsports in general, and it was pretty cool. I think, being a Hendrick fan, if you are, to see them starting in P1, 2, and 3. But it was interesting how Chase Elliott, what he start P8, I believe.
Yeah, just about.
Yeah, I think so. P8, and he winds up finishing P2. But if you're a Hendrick fan, then you had a great day. If you're a Gibbs fan, you're a 50-50. But I still think as far as playoff drivers, it was pretty scattered throughout the entire field. Between first, second, fourth, fifth, and it was just, we saw a couple of guys coming in. Ty Gibbs finished in P15. William Byron came in 17th place. I wonder what happened to William Byron. Why did he fall off, Kevin?
Yeah, it just looked like those guys, for whatever the reason, went the wrong way as the race progressed. Like we had talked about earlier, they had speed off the truck, but for whatever reason, the long run speed, I think Byron and Rudy Fugle were just a little bit off on something there, end up, going a lap down. But who's kidding who? There was only about 10 cars that finished on the lead lap because Larson had pretty much lapped the whole damn field. And that's just kind of, that's how it went. And for some drivers, not so good, right? Brad Keselowski not moving on. We talked about Truex, of course. Harrison Burton, I think we kind of knew, he got in on a Daytona win, didn't have a great first round, and then had a power steering failure early in that race. He was done. Harrison was in a must win, but we did learn that Harrison will be fielding the 15 car for AM Racing next season in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. So there is an opportunity there for him to go run, at a level down and work his way back up into a cup ride.
Which is exactly what needs to be done. He needs to drop back down. Like you mentioned, he got a super speedway win, and in my eyes, anybody can get that win. As we know, it's a roll of the dice. Anybody can win the race. It's just a matter of luck, in my opinion, and staying out of the wrecks. So if you can kind of get up front, or just be lucky enough to avoid all the mayhem that goes on there at Talladega and Daytona, anyone can win those. So I didn't think he was going to make it past the first round anyway, but I think it is cool to see that he is going to be racing. But like you said, in the Xfinity Series, he's got a ride. Pretty cool for him.
That's a good feeling. Look, you talk to a guy like Cole Custer and others that have gone back to the Xfinity, found success, and now have a path back to Cup. Harrison's young enough. He's pretty clean cut. He's a stand-up guy. Obviously, we know who his old man is. He's respected around the garage area. Fairly clean driver, I think. I don't see any reason why we won't be seeing Harrison back in the Cup in the next 2 to 4 years.
I'd agree with you there. And Jeff Burton, like I said, his old man, he's just such a good guy. I really liked listening to him up there in the booth. I thought it was really cool to see him up there, see his son win before getting dropped back down into a lower series, because at the time we knew he didn't even have a ride lined up quite yet. So he was pretty jazzed. So really cool to see for him there. But I think this is the right decision, Kevin.
Yeah. Like I said, at least he's got a ride, and that's more than some folks can say. We're still kind of waiting to hear what's going to happen with Corey LaJoie. We obviously know Jeff starting this weekend in Kansas. This is just kind of a strange move for me to understand, Jeff. So Corey LaJoie and Justin Haley are basically going to swap. Now, we've seen a lot of internal moves happen before with different organizations, whether it's pit crew members. We saw driver changes in 23XI. We've seen some things like this before, but this is Rick Ware Racing Inspire, right? You're going from the 51 to the 7. So interesting there. I'm curious to see how Justin Haley is going to run in the 7 car. We kind of know what LaJoie has done, a couple top 10s here and there, maybe a super speedway top 5. I'm just curious to see, is it a driver problem or is it an equipment problem? And I guess we're going to learn that pretty quick.
My issue with this whole thing is the timing of this move to do it, towards the end of the year. I think they should have just let him finish out the year because, as we know, it takes a while for a driver to get used to the crew chief, the crew itself, the spotter. These guys need to know each other's little nuances, and just even the way they speak about how they accept, chatting in the ear about being clear or just getting used to each other's and be able to jive. You know what I mean? It's tough because we saw Jeff Gordon and Steve Letarte did a damn good job, and Chad Knaus and Jimmy Johnson had a really good chemistry. But to switch up in the middle of the year for Justin Haley and LaJoie doesn't quite make sense to me to do it right now. I think they should have waited until the season was over so they could kind of learn a lot in the off season and kind of get to mesh a little bit better, Kevin.
Yeah, just an interesting timing call. Like you said, I've always kind of been in the place of, well, let's finish out the year, with the current team and try to get the best finish we can, manufacture championships, things like that are still in play. So I'm just curious to see what they're going to find out of this move. I mean, again, between Rick Ware Racing and Spire Motorsports, two teams switching it up, just kind of uncharacteristic, but obviously they know more than we do. And I'm curious to see, what that's going to look like here starting this weekend in Kansas. And one last thing on Bristol, of course, was that Xfinity race. We saw Dale Earnhardt Jr. running that 88 car for what could be the last time ever. Junior said there's nothing on the books going forward. He doesn't have any contract. Not that can't change. He said, he can get a call tomorrow. Junior is going to be 50 years old here in a couple of weeks. Ended up finishing P7. Jeff had to go to the back because he had a radio failure early in the race, worked his way through the field. Pretty good finish, I would say, all around for Junior compared to what happened there last year.
Yeah, it was really cool just to see him back out on the track. I mean, everybody loves old Junebug, so it's cool to see him get out there and do a race or two a year. But it's going to be kind of a bummer if that really is his last NASCAR race, and I don't know if it will be or not. Who knows if he's going to wind up buying a team here in the next couple of years and entering into the Cup Series. But even then, if he did that, I still don't think he would run the Cup Series. I think he would, run one of his cars out there in the Xfinity Series if he does do it again, Kevin.
Yeah, and I hope he does. I like seeing Junebug, get behind the wheel of an Xfinity car once a year. He's still going to run his late model, his sun drop late model down in Florence, Myrtle Beach, New Smyrna, some of those places, Hickory. So he is still going to run the late model series. So, Junior's not done driving yet. That boy, he might not run for a championship, but you're not going to keep him from driving for too long. But JR Motorsports, solid team in Xfinity, running for a championship. They're getting ready to kick off here in Kansas this weekend as well. So yeah, I mean, all yellow brick roads lead to Kansas Speedway, Jeff, as we go out there to Old Toto, Dorothy.
And then anyone that ever plays a NASCAR heat, the sun sets to the north on that track. If you're playing it on the old PlayStation, you and I noticed that when we first watched it. We've been there so many times. We're like, why is the sun setting in turns 3 and 4 on this track, Kevin?
Yeah, you bring up a good topic there. I actually just got an update from the guys over at iRacing that are working on the next console system for NASCAR 25. Looks like they're talking about next summer. Summer of 25 will be the new NASCAR video game coming out. Totally different developers. These guys know racing. They've done sim racing. They design all the sim racing that the Cup drivers work on. It's going to be fantastic, Joe. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, hopefully they get the sun setting behind the grandstands where it's supposed to set and not off turn 3 in the video game.
I just found that pretty damn funny, but yeah, it'll be cool to see the new one come out. Looking forward to it. I think they've got a lot more information to work with as far as getting that put together. Overall, it's been pretty fun to play here and there. So we'll see what happens with that, Kevin. But yeah, Kansas is going to be a great race. I know you're heading out there next week, and you're looking at a little bit of weather maybe on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, keeping an eye on it. The forecast looks very similar to when we were there in May. We did have a rain delay in the May race by 4.5 hours, and then we finished in the dark with Kyle Larson beating out Chris Buescher by less than probably a quarter of an inch there. So a little bit of weather coming in. They're saying about 30-40% chance of showers. Everyone knows in the Midwest in the fall, it's cloudy, it's going to be damp. That's just kind of what we get out there in Kansas. But hopefully it holds off and we have a great race, Jeff, because we've got a full weekend of racing coming up, ARCA Series, Xfinity, and Cup. We talked about Kyle Larson and Chris Buescher having the closest finish ever. We go back to this race a year ago, and the 45 of Tyler Reddick found victory lane with Denny Hamlin right behind him leading 63 laps. So At an early glance, I would say it's your usual suspects. I mean, you have to have Hendrick Motorsports up there based off their performance on mile and a halfs and what we saw Kyle Larson put together, not only last week, but there in the spring. And then you got to look at, I think, the remaining Gibbs Toyotas, Christopher Bell and Denny Hamlin. I think are going to have a lot of speed. They've been consistent at Kansas in the past, and as well as 23XI. Huge opportunity for Bubba Wallace to go out there and try and get a win. He won this race 2 years ago. Extremely fast on mile and a half. His teammate won it a year ago. So I think 23XI Toyotas across the board are going to be fast in Kansas.
Yeah, definitely keep your eye on the Toyotas and the Chevrolets. I think those are the cars to watch. And, like you said, Bubba Wallace could have a really good race here. I think that's, out of his 2 wins, that's the only one that's I'm going to consider legitimate. Because again, I don't consider super speedways legitimate wins. I mean, hey, you still get that big cup in the trophy. So, this is definitely a track that Bubba Wallace can do very well at. So yeah, I think he's going to do a good job. Like you mentioned, man, Tyler Reddick and Denny Hamlin are some of the guys that I'm kind of keeping my eye on. It's going to be a fun weekend. The ARCA series. Hey, by chance, did you catch the ARCA series this weekend, the East Coast?
I did not catch the ARCA East race. I heard it was a good one.
It was really good. William Sarwich won. He's 17 years old, man. He's an up and comer. 2 ARCA Menard Series East Coast Championship. He won last year. He won this year. So it's pretty damn cool to see this kid run. I was amazed at his stats, and I started reading a little bit more about him. He's got 26 ARCA Series starts, and he's won 12 of them. His average finish this last year was 1.5. I mean, you can't finish any better than that. I mean, first to second in almost every single race. So yeah, he had 23 top 5 finishes in his 26 starts. So that stat just amazed me. So yeah, driving the number 18 car in the East Coast Series is William Salwich. Check him out, folks.
Yeah, that's impressive for sure. And ARCA Series will be running Kansas this weekend. They're going to run before the trucks on Friday for the Reese's 150. Always a great series to go out and catch, if you get into town early enough before the truck race on Friday, weather permitting. A lot of great racing coming up from Kansas this weekend, Jeff. Wish you were going to be out there with me to cover this race. You're only 8 hours from there. So maybe we can get you out to Kansas next year.
I'm going to have to do that, Kevin. Yeah, I didn't have a chance to get up there for this coming weekend. I've got too much other plans going on for the month of October. But, I'll be jealous that you're out there.
It's one of my favorite racetracks, for obvious reasons. You go back and look at what we saw there in the spring. You go back, you look at the video game move, speaking of video games, that Carl Edwards tried to pull on Jimmy Johnson in 2008, where he just held it wide open, bounced, he tried to Ross Chastain it at Kansas, didn't work. Jimmy Johnson went on to win the race. A lot of great finishes there. Jeff Gordon winning the inaugural night race. Just so many great memories there. It always puts on a great show for the fans. And that's why it has 2 races a year. And that's why it's kicking off the round of 12.
I think that's a great track to have in the playoffs, 100%. I almost think it should be one of the cutoff races versus the very first race of the 3. I think that would be a wonderful race to have as a cutoff. It's kind of like we're seeing a lot of wild card type tracks, I think, in the playoffs this year. So as far as, what NASCAR, our series is based on these 1.5 mile tracks for the most part, right? So I know we've wanted to add a lot of road courses in over the course of the last few years. It's been done. And, now I'm thinking it's time to take a few of those road courses out and put some more 1.5 miles back on. I don't want to always say, yeah, it's the meat and taters of our sport, but it is. And I think those, with the package that we have right now, obviously 1.5 mile racing is much better than short track racing. So we should definitely add some more 1.5 miles onto the schedule and back into the playoffs, in my opinion, Kevin.
Yeah, and you and I have definitely talked. We know that the Roval's back next year, but we're hopeful for 2026 that the Charlotte Oval would come back. And if we kept the current lineup with that, Jeff, that would put 4.5 miles in the playoffs, which I'm okay with. We look at the round of 8 coming up here, which starts at Las Vegas on October 20th. You go Vegas and Homestead. So back-to-back 1.5 miles to kick off the round of 8, followed by a 0.5 mile at Martinsville. Great stage. I have no problem with the round of 8. Like you had mentioned, Kansas would be a good one to probably cut off the round of 12, or even, knowing the way NASCAR likes to do things, I wouldn't be surprised if they put Talladega as the cutoff.
I wouldn't want to see Talladega as the cutoff. I just don't. If you're going to do that, put that as the first race. I don't want to see a super speedway as a cutoff race. So hopefully that will not happen. But as far as the rest of the the season plays out, I think the tracks are all pretty damn good. Like you mentioned, with the round of 8, I really like, and then of course Phoenix. It's a fun track. We've been there many a times, and it's always a good time when we're out there in Phoenix, being able to get out there on the infield, and every fan has access to victory lane if you want it. So it's pretty damn cool. I think that Phoenix does a good job as far as the accessibility to the fans in the stands if they want to pay that extra few bucks to get out there for the pre-concert and the pre-race and the introductions. So it's pretty cool, because it's hard to get out there for victory lane, especially if it's going to be a championship, Kevin.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love the way Phoenix does it. We've been down there many of years now covering the championship. Great fan access. I would, suggest to the listeners, if you catch this early enough, if you head to Kansas Speedway on Saturday, they do what's called the fan walk. And it's fantastic, Jeff. I don't know if you ever took advantage of this. It's a $15 ticket. It gets you down into the victory lane area, into the media center vicinity, where you can catch the drivers coming in and out right before practice and qualifying. There's not a ton of people at the track. It's one of Kansas Speedway's hidden gems. I'll certainly be in the infield area on Saturday hanging out. Take advantage of it.
Super cool. Absolutely. For only $15. You'd be crazy not to. I mean, go down there on Saturday. As we know where that track is located, it's called the Legends area, folks. And there's a lot of really good restaurants out there. I don't do too much shopping, but they've got some outlet malls and whatnot out there. But as far as going out and catching, get something to eat, hang out. I mean, one time I was there at Hooters with my mom and dad, and Denny Hamlin happened to be sitting right next to us. It was funny as hell. I looked over, I'm like, hey, there's Denny Hamlin just sitting right there. And so, you never know who you're going to run into. I'm going out there on a Saturday and just hanging out. And then, like you said, man, go down there and get that fan walk and go down on the field, meet the drivers if you can.
Great experience for sure. And if you do go to that Hooters off of turn 3, I don't think you're going to see Chase Elliott or anybody from Hendrick Motorsports there, but you just might catch Denny chomping on some of his favorite wings.
That's right. Yep. Since, I think there's a little litigation going on right now between old Hendrick Motorsports and Hooters for not fulfilling Chase Elliott's sponsorship deal. There's no love lost there. I don't think they're going to be spending any of their money over at Hooters, Kevin.
It's too bad, because I liked Hooters in the sport. Kind of gave us that 1993 feel when Alan Kawicki was running it. But hey, that's just the way the world turns, and going to be a great race this weekend, Jeff. Looking forward to it. The Hollywood Casino 400. Another great thing, if you're a gambler, the Hollywood Casino, Jeff, right off turn 2 there. They built that back in 2012. Massive facility, beautiful casino. A lot to do in that area of Kansas. It's right over on the Kansas City, Kansas side. Probably I would say 15 minutes from downtown Kansas City, about 20 minutes from the airport. Pretty easily accessible, right off I-70, Jeff, as you know, probably one of the easiest in and out racetracks in the country.
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite tracks to go to, just because you can get in and out real easy, and there's lots of stuff to do. It's a beautiful area, Kevin. So I can't wait to see what you have to say when you come back.
Yep, looking forward to it. Probably not next Monday night, Jeff. I will be on an airplane back to Denver. So we'll probably go ahead and do a Tuesday drop next week. So we're looking at October 1st for a recap on Kansas. But follow us on all social media platforms. I'll be sure to be posting on Instagram, X, and Facebook this weekend from out there. Try and bring some action to the Mash the Gas crew. And look forward to it, Jeff. I'll be back with you next week, brother. Until then.
Well, Kevin, while you're out there, mash the gas.